Welcome back to Dissolving Depression. So, have you ever wondered, how do I find something special in this moment? Where do I find something special? Where do I find something meaningful? You know, a lot of people ask this question, and I don't know that very many of them ever find the genuine answer. And you know, the reason that they don't is that the action that leads to this meaning, this ever renewing meaning, that the action that it takes to find that is unlike anything you would have ever expected. It's contrary, it's the antithesis of what you would expect. So we're going to look at what is that action coming up in this video. All right, so step out of the spotlight and find the joy of real meaning. Hopefully you worked a bit with the power of self-observation from that last talk, because it's going to play an instrumental role in what we talk about here. And I want to go straight into what we're going to start with as our working example. So this is something we're all very familiar with. Well, most of us will be familiar with this. It's that moment where you've posted something on Facebook, on Instagram, and you pop in real quick in between meetings or on the way to school or whatever it is you're doing, and you just take a look. How many likes do we hit? Whoa, 25 likes. Pretty good, pretty good. Oh, a couple of comments. I loved what you had to say here, Tim. That was excellent. Oh, wow. And you feel this rush through you. So I have a diagram here to help make this clear. It goes something like this. I call it the fireworks self. Whoa, 12 people reacted to your photo. Thump. Bam. Wow. And it fades away. Over and over again, this goes, checking Facebook every day, checking Instagram. The fireworks self. This explosion of feeling special in the moment. Something in us absolutely loves this strong, surging feeling of me, of I'm special, of they noticed me. And you know, this actually becomes an addiction. Way before social media and Facebook, Instagram, way before any of those came into the picture, there was this long-standing addiction to this feeling of being noticed, being special, being the center of attention. And if we look at the different conditions where we can see this expressed, one of the best ones to look at is to study compliments. You know, a lot of the things that transpire on social media is a lot like receiving a compliment. But if you ever watch what takes place when somebody compliments you, when you get that nice comment on that post, is that you go from feeling unnoticed and insignificant to feeling this strong feeling of I'm important, I'm noticed, people appreciate me, I matter. This is called being identified. There's a longer term that we use to refer to it. It's identification. These things are synonymous. Being identified, identification, the false self, all of these things are sort of the same thing. That there are distinctions, and we'll get into them as we go along. But this state of being identified, and I've got a couple pictures that I want to show for this. So here's a great example of being identified, what it actually looks like. It's being singled out from the crowd. All of us are there, down at the pub, down at work, at that social gathering somewhere. And somebody says, I heard what happened at work today, Tim. And suddenly the spotlight is on. I heard about that amazing thing you said to the boss. The spotlight gets even brighter. Being identified, to be singled out. I'm the one who did that. I'm the one who spoke to the boss this way. I'm the one who made that exceptional post on Instagram. This it becomes an addiction in our lives, this feeling of I'm the one. And you could even go so far as to say it's not too far off the mark to look at it like this. That there is this moment where a part of us is bowing. Thank you very much. I appreciate you for recognizing me. And we could really stop there. We don't have to say anything more than that, but it oftentimes comes with, thank you for recognizing me for my courageousness in the way I spoke to the boss. Thank you for recognizing my good parenting. Thank you for recognizing my exceptional scholastic achievements in school. Now, this strong, surging feeling of me that happens moment to moment to moment comes with a very serious consequence, a very serious problem, and it's this. Let's go back to our firework self. The problem is that momentary sense of feeling special always fades. There for a moment, then gone. And I'm left scrambling. Now I need to make another post. I need to do something because I feel myself disappearing into the background, becoming unnoticed again. Now, here's something, though, that is very important to note about this whole dynamic. Have you ever noticed this? When you're unnoticed or when you're discounted, you say the joke amongst the group and nobody laughs, or you make the post on Facebook and it gets no likes. In the first 6 hours, 2 likes at the end of the day, and you thought this was going to be the breakthrough post. Ever notice that there's still a strong, surging feeling of, I'm important? Now, it's not the way you think, though. It's not because I'm being recognized. It's a strong feeling of, I'm not being recognized. I'm being looked over. They're not noticing. And it's still this strong, surging sense of me. By the way, this is where that power of self-observation, that quiet introspection, that quiet looking to study your own experience is important. Is this what he's saying true? That when I'm unnoticed, that even then there's still this strong sense of me in one way or another. Either I feel appreciated and I love to feel that feeling of appreciation, or if I go unnoticed, I love to feel the feeling of betrayal, of being unrecognized, of having people in my life who can't recognize what I bring to the moment. And so I have another version of that firework self that looks like this. Whatever it might be, you're getting old, you're unnoticed. Instead of you're the brilliant writer in one of my other examples, that's the worst piece of work I've seen in quite some time. That there are these explosions also of the negative side of things, of not being noticed, of being criticized. And here's where kind of a twist comes in. This is where we need to strap in this seatbelt. Either one of these is perfectly acceptable to some part of us that just craves this feeling of me. Now, I know that sounds impossible. So what I'm saying is, whether it's feeling appreciated or whether it's feeling unappreciated, it makes no difference to this part of ourselves as long as we're feeling something. Now, I remember when I first came across this idea, this was 20-some years ago, I thought, no way, not possible. This was me talking to the book I was reading. You're telling me that I want to feel bad? You must be a little bit loony. I don't think so. But then, as I worked over the years, because it never really came across any good explanations of, prove that to me. Show me that's really true. Show me that that's really true. Here's what eventually brought me to see this. And it was that in moments where there could have been peace in my life, something in me preferred agitation, vibration, irritation. For example, you walk away from a conversation, let me leave it for me. I would walk away from a conversation and see and just relive what happened. And if it was a conversation where there was a blunder, I said the dumbest thing during the conversation, I would walk away from that conversation and just relive the pain of that moment over and over. If you have a run-in with a colleague, if you ever had this happen at work, had a run-in with somebody at school, sibling, parents, and it goes terribly. They jump all over you for whatever reason. And you just have this blow up between you. You can go on reliving that for days. And here's the thing, it's not necessary. Just like, if you remember this image, just like how my mind would imagine me falling off a cliff if I would go out hiking with somebody, and there happened to be a cliff nearby and we were standing on the edge of it. For some reason, my mind would imagine, and I know all of us have had this happen, you're driving down traffic and you picture, what if I were to drive my car into that lane, or whatever the imagination does. And it sends a little bit of fear, torment. It sort of terrorizes our system for a bit. This is an unnecessary act of our internal faculties. Well, the same thing with having made a blunder in a conversation or a blow up with a family member or a friend or a coworker. There's no reason to have to relive over and over and over again the experience just for the sake of having the pain. And yet, that is exactly what would happen. That's what I would notice would happen, is that I can, even if I just reason it out, I can see that there's no real reason for me to have to relive these moments over and over again. And yet, something in me is drawn to it. I can't put it down. That's what we mean by something loves to just have any strong feeling of itself, whether it's from mistreatment from other people or the appreciation from other people or anything else. And so let's take this image as a way to drive this home. You know, that feeling of myself, that strong feeling of myself. Something is just looking to continue that. Something in me likes to think about what just happened, enter into this, fall into this identification, this becoming identified with what just happened, and it loves to feel this sensation of myself. Doesn't matter if it's positive sensation, negative sensation, the sensation of myself is always the same, like this light bulb. This, if you imagine this light bulb out in space somewhere, but connected to a power source, and all it does is just dump this energy uselessly out into the universe. It just dumps this energy. Something in us feeds on this feeling of me. I'm special in whatever way it happens in those moments. This addiction, and it is an addiction, and it's an addiction that is in all of humanity. It's part of what we are born with. We're born to transcend this part of ourselves. This addiction is one of the principal causes of depression. The thrill of that vibrating sense of myself, and then the pursuit of that feeling. And why is that one of these contributing elements in this ongoing state of depression? It's because of what we saw with the fireworks self. That feeling of myself always fades. It always fades, and I have to go run after another way to feel something. Let me change it. Another way to feel myself. And if I get to the point where I can't find things out there in life to reflect a positive feeling of myself, where I can feel myself in what we would say is a positive manner, feeling that I'm special and appreciated, I more and more get backed into this corner where all I can do is think about how unappreciated, how nobody notices. And that can become this pit of despair, loneliness, isolation. And so that, just to really cement this in our minds, I want to give you this image. When we talk about being on center stage in the spotlight, remember that spotlight, when this strong feeling of myself is always going to fade. That spotlight always eventually gets switched off. Somebody else becomes the center of the moment. By the way, somebody else becoming the center of the moment is meant to be our natural state, where for a moment we are called forward. For a moment, we are called forward to be active, to be the center, because life has set it up that life has called us to be the active force, explain something, describe something, recount a story, whatever. And then we're supposed to naturally, effortlessly have somebody else step forward. Without the smallest feeling of, oh, they've got center stage now. So that spotlight, if I become addicted to the feeling of that spotlight, that feeling of myself around people, I've set myself up. I've set myself up for when it fades out again. And this fear of disappearing, this is at the heart of so many of these conditions that people struggle with. Social anxiety disorder, anger, stress, worry, this condition of depression, the fear of disappearing. Anger, when it when that rage just tears through because somebody's not doing what we expect them to do, things aren't going the way I wanted them to go. We talk about, at a very high level, that it's because of expectations. Well, we're getting way below, way down deep into what's really underneath all of that, what we call expectations. And it's that there is this feeling of myself connected with getting this job done, connected with getting this house built by a certain time. And when the materials don't arrive on time, or when that person doesn't laugh at my joke, doesn't return the smile, I begin to disappear. I begin to fade. What I had become addicted to, it begins to just fade off into the background. And so there's a scramble. Anger is the scramble to reestablish what I had counted on as myself either 2 minutes from now, 2 seconds from now, or 2 years from now when the house is complete. So any moment where I'm taking the credit for what somebody maybe is complimenting me for, flattering me for, taking the credit, whether on the positive side or the negative side of things. When we do that, when we personalize the moment, and that can be personalizing it in the sense of who I am, what people think of me, but it can also be personalizing in the sense of this shouldn't have gone this way. That's a personal thing. This shouldn't have gone that way. That's personalizing the moment. Because remember how we talked about the moment never gets it wrong. Life always produces the perfect resultant for everything that's in play at that moment. Never gets it wrong. And yet here I am saying, this shouldn't have happened this way. When we personalize the moment like that, we begin to acquire ignorance. So taking credit as the witty person at the party. If ever there were a moment of taking a bow, thank you very much. The jokes just keep coming. When I begin to feel myself and personalize that moment and take credit for that wit, I'm acquiring this ignorance. Because what's happening is there's a false story that's being built about who I am, about how people look at me, what they think of me, how much they appreciate me. And as this story begins to form within us, as far as who I am in their eyes, who I am in my eyes, or what life should be doing that it isn't doing, as that story begins to form, I'm acquiring all of this ignorance because life wasn't supposed to go like that. These people may not think of me the way I think right now I see them thinking of me in a certain light. Tomorrow it may be entirely different. So this false story that I start to build about all of these relationships, the whole of life really, is going to create problem after problem after problem. That ignorance always produces problems. For one thing, it'll trap us. It traps us in this futile struggle where everywhere we go, we have to prove ourselves. And I've got this illustration to look at here. It's actually a series of them. We talked about, I start out loving painting. And then at a certain point, I become identified as a painter. And now instead of just the joyful act of painting, I begin to take on the persona of a painter. And the moment this begins to happen, I've essentially hung a target on myself. A target where I stand at the place of being threatened by all of life, by criticisms when somebody says you're not a great painter. This is what this taking credit, getting lost in this identity as a great painter, is all of these different examples. And we can work on, maybe down in the comments, you could put some of these examples of where something forms within us and we had no idea we were setting ourselves up to be the target of life. Not because life in any way is attacking or malicious or anything at all like that, but because we stand there as something opposed to life going in certain directions. Where life says it's perfectly okay for somebody to walk up and say, I really don't enjoy your work. I don't like this style of painting. Where life perfectly allows that, when I'm identified as a painter, my little law system within my mind won't allow that. And so I get a conflict with this person. What else happens when we get lost in this taking credit and building this false personal story? Well, we build barriers between us and other people because I'm always trying to single myself out from the crowd. We have constant competition. You know, I'm winning the crowd over with my jokes, and suddenly somebody else comes in with a humdinger. Now I got to step in front of that person and come up with a better joke. This doesn't happen well, sometimes it does happen this overtly. But a lot of times this is just a subtle action that's happening. But that competition builds these barriers between us. And this false personal story, it also makes us quite weak. Every celebration, think of this. So every celebration of those likes on Facebook makes me weak. Why? Because I'm building a life in this conditional ground where the next post may flop. And then I wonder, well, geez, do people think I'm stupid? Do people think I'm weird that I posted that? So every celebration like that makes me weak, but also every sullen ceremony, sullen, S-U-L-L-E-N. I looked up what's the opposite of celebration. There weren't really any antonyms for celebration. But every sullen ceremony where, I can't believe I didn't get any likes on this. I can't believe nobody commented on my new clothes. I can't believe my parents still see me as the kid in the family. Still ride me for not having found somebody to marry or whatever it might be. All of those sullen, dark celebrations, those ceremonies of, God, I can't believe this happened. Those make me weak as well because they, just like the likes, they put me in this conditional ground where I'm flying high one day and then shattered the next. So all of this eventually needs to be corrected. And so how do I do that? That's the big question. So I've written down 2 points here. I'm going to start withdrawing myself from the celebrations, and I'm going to start withdrawing myself from the sullen ceremonies. Now, again, we're talking about these internal actions. Now, how would you do this? Well, you might, instead of checking that post hour after hour after hour, when you feel the temptation to go, let's go take a look and just see how many likes we've got, don't do it, and instead remain in the moment with yourself, where you're not entering into this world of highs and lows based on whether people are moved by what you do or not. At the same time that I'm withdrawing myself from those kinds of actions. I'm going to start to learn how to live purely in this moment. I want to learn how to live moments purely so that I don't acquire this new ignorance. So what might that look like? How about when I walk away from a conversation, I don't make any assessments of how it went. I don't even relive it. I set the whole thing down and walk away pure in this moment, 100% in this moment, instead of walking away and sort of glazed over thinking about what just took place in that conversation. I'm going to start to set these things down because they've been wounding me. Every one of them has been wounding me. Now, somebody is going to hear this and they're going to say, well, what about, we talked about this in an earlier talk, what about my need for meaning? Won't living this way mean that the small bit of meaning that I have is basically going to be gone and I'm going to be stripped of it? Well, what good is that temporary meaning if it puts me in this world where I'm nothing but a puppet being moved by what everybody else does? Whether I measure up to my own standard or whether these other people are judging me according to this standard that I also have within myself, what good is it if there's no safety, there's no stability, there's no peace there? More than that, though, is that there is a different source of meaning, one that isn't temporary, and one that you could actually call being connected to principles that are true forever. But to begin to live that way, more and more you have to factor out the personal. Filter out the personal from the moments of your life as much as you can. Now, don't extrapolate about what this means. That doesn't mean that you now don't have any identity of yourself anymore as Tim or Joe or Mary or Sue. I have no connection with what is personal. It doesn't mean this at all. You still have your personal life, but as far as where you are finding this meaning of what life is all about, you're going beyond these personal conditional situations of they love me and then suddenly they don't love me. And you're looking beyond the personal to what's universal. Instead of, they love me, you might look deeper than that and find something universal about the nature of why people love one another, why they're drawn to one another. See, those facts are true forever. They're always true. And we'll be looking at a lot of them as we get into the later part of the course. But the fact of he loves me, she loves me, the fact of I'm the witty one at the party, those are all temporary facts that are going to fade away. Now, this talk is, I've got to wrap this talk up. I don't want to, I have to wrap this talk up. So I'm going to break this into 2 talks. We're going to do another one right after this and obviously take a break and replenish yourself. But then we're going to follow up this one with probably my most favorite example of how do you find this eternal meaning, this meaning that is true forever, this impersonal meaning. Use any word you want. Doesn't matter. The words can be the limitation. Don't let them stand in the way. This profound new meaning that we're talking about. We're going to take the movie Dead Poet Society, and there's a particular scene where we'll get tremendous lessons about how to find meaning that outlives the moment. that isn't conditional or personal. So until we get to that talk, so what do you do now with what we've talked about so far? Begin stepping out of the spotlight voluntarily. See the wisdom in stepping out of that spotlight and voluntarily stepping off the stage. It's going to keep you safe. Take yourself out of the picture. So imagine that. Let's just do this real quick. Imagine this. Imagine you're a photographer, and here, let's switch to this camera. Like we're taking a picture of this painting, and you're getting the shot framed up, nice and neat like that, and it's a lovely painting. Now, what would you think of a photographer who he or she could be shooting these beautiful shots of objective beauty in life, but they're always trying to get themselves into the picture. Hey, there we go. That's how I want to get the picture of the painting. This is what people are always doing. They're always trying to get themselves in there so that people notice, so that they don't fade away. By the way, that might actually seem kind of familiar if you've seen or have been or still are somebody who's always trying to get that selfie, of you and wherever you are. Why do we do that? This makes me real. This gives me a strong sense of who I am. I'm the one who was able to hike up that mountain today, and none of you were able to do that. See how this builds these separations between people? This is going to revolutionize the way you see social media. You'll see that it is post after post after post of people trying to prove their specialness by showing what they have or can do and what the rest can't do, or simply just don't have the opportunity at this point, but I'm doing it now. So more and more, try to take yourself out of the picture. For some people, just going a week without posting a selfie of any kind may be immense internal work. And they'll be giving themselves a more and more solid foundation for real life. So take yourself off the stage, take yourself out of the picture, stop trying to be noticed. Stop fishing for compliments. These are all things you can practically do. Stop fishing for that compliment from those other people. Or if life suddenly drags you off the stage, you were standing front and center, and life drags you off the stage. When it does, do nothing. Don't scramble back up there on hands and knees trying to get back into the spotlight. Just quietly stay off stage. When you do this, the spotlight will naturally flood all around you. It will naturally go on to the whole of life. This is secretly what your heart actually yearns for. Remember we talked about that horse that's been penned up, and so it's lost its spirit of being a horse and its head is down. What you're yearning for is this profound meaning that isn't connected to the personal and therefore weak and fragile and vulnerable, subject to being obliterated at any point, and instead this meaning that is rock solid, that never stops being true, that is 100% reliable. All right, so work with these exercises, report what you find down in the comments. Let me know if there are questions about this, and otherwise we will move on to this complementary lesson here coming up in the next video, where we're going to look at that scene from Dead Poets Society and actually see firsthand what it means to begin looking for and finding this ever-renewing meaning in these common moments all around us. Okay, so that's coming up in the next video. We'll see you there.